Okay, let's unpack this. In our increasingly digital world, the software and systems we rely on, they're the very backbone of modern organizations, right? They manage everything from our daily finances, critical infrastructure, to, well, global communications. But what happens when unseen cracks appear in their foundation? Imagine a seemingly minor variable, maybe just a tiny piece of code that was overlooked, left uninitialized. This seemingly innocuous oversight could suddenly open the door to widespread chaos. Or an antivirus solution, the thing designed to protect us, could inexplicably crash, leaving the gates wide open for a devastating ransomware attack. The impact can range from, like, a minor glitch forcing a quick restart, all the way to a full-blown system disruption, or even a direct gateway for devastating cyber attacks that bring businesses to their knees. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? The digital world, for all its power and convenience, is built on a foundation that constantly needs, well, shoring up. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into the intricate dance between these hidden software flaws, the critical patches that fix them, and the broader implications for security across the board. Our mission is to understand not just the technical details of these vulnerabilities, but the profound ripple effects they have on security, and the complex challenges of patching them in real-world environments, and the ever-present risks lurking within our incredibly complex digital supply chains. We're going to examine recent high-profile security advisories and patches issued by major tech companies like Cisco and Atlassian. Our goal is to give you a shortcut to being well-informed, providing surprising facts and crucial insights that will reshape how you think about digital safety, and the constant vigilance required to maintain it. Get ready for some genuine aha moments that will illuminate the hidden battles fought daily in the digital realm.
What's truly fascinating here and, often overlooked is how seemingly isolated technical details, like that single variable not being initialized correctly, how that can snowball into far-reaching operational consequences. It's quite something. If we step back and connect this to the bigger picture, it profoundly illuminates the relentless, constant vigilance required in modern software development and deployment. It's not enough to know what happened. It's absolutely crucial to understand why it poses such a significant risk and how organizations respond to these continually emerging threats and, well, the sheer complexity involved in securing such vast digital ecosystems. This isn't just about fixing bugs. It's a fundamental, ongoing strategic challenge, really.
That's a crucial distinction. And before we jump into the core of our deep dive, a quick word from our sponsor. This deep dive is brought to you by Stonefly, a true leader in enterprise storage, backup, and disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions. In a world increasingly targeted by ransomware and other sophisticated cyber threats, where hidden vulnerabilities can be exploited in, well, a heartbeat, Stonefly provides secure, ransomware-proof storage. They do this through cutting-edge, air-gapped, and immutable solutions. Think of it as a fortress for your data, completely isolated from potential attacks. If you're looking to protect your vital data and ensure business continuity against digital threats that loom larger every day, you can contact sales at stonefly.com to schedule a demo. They truly understand the urgency and severity of these challenges. Now let's get right into the urgent drumbeat of recent vulnerabilities and patches that are shaping the current cybersecurity landscape. We're going to kick things off by shining a spotlight on some recent security advisories from Cisco. These paint a very clear picture of critical gaps in connectivity and protection that users, potentially including you, might be facing right now. These aren't just theoretical issues, they're active threats.
Yeah, these case studies are particularly illuminating because they showcase the diverse nature of vulnerabilities. They range from subtle configuration oversights, maybe overlooked initialization details, to more deep-seated code flaws. And critically, they demonstrate how these can manifest in real-world systems, impacting millions of devices and users globally. Understanding the specifics helps us grasp the broader challenge, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Let's start with the high-severity denial-of-service vulnerability in Cisco's Meraki VPN. It's identified as CVE 2025-2010. When we say denial of service, you should imagine a digital road being completely blocked, just preventing legitimate traffic from getting through. This particular flaw was discovered in the Cisco AnyConnect VPN server, a widely used solution for secure remote access. It runs on Cisco Meraki MX and Z series devices. The root cause, as you mentioned, is incredibly subtle but profoundly impactful. A variable isn't initialized correctly when an SSL VPN session is established. To put this in a more relatable way, think of it like an electrical circuit where a switch isn't properly reset to its starting position. When a new connection comes in, instead of the system knowing exactly where to begin, it starts with a chaotic, undefined state.
That's a perfect analogy, and because that variable isn't properly set, an authenticated remote attacker. So someone who already has valid VPN user credentials They can exploit this. They don't need to guess passwords or break through firewalls, you see. By simply supplying specially crafted attributes during the establishment process, they can force the AnyConnect VPN server to restart. This isn't about gaining control, but about disruption. Pure disruption. Think about the immediate consequences for a large organization. All established SSL VPN sessions fail instantly. This means remote employees, maybe halfway through a critical meeting or working on sensitive data, are suddenly disconnected. They're forced to reinitiate and reauthenticate. In a business context, this isn't just an inconvenience. It can lead to significant productivity losses, missed deadlines, and even impact critical operations for companies that rely heavily on remote access.
And it absolutely gets worse. While a single restart is disruptive, imagine an attacker sustaining this kind of activity. If they continuously send these crafted attributes, they could completely prevent any new SSL VPN connections from being established. This effectively makes the VPN service unavailable for all legitimate users. During a prolonged attack, it's a total lockout. Employees are cut off, partners can't connect, vital business functions that depend on secure remote access just grind to a halt.
Yeah.
While the server does eventually recover without manual intervention once the attack traffic starts, the business impact during even a few hours of such an attack could be immense. We're talking lost revenue, reputational damage, and a very frustrated workforce.
What makes this particularly critical is the incredibly broad range of affected Cisco Meraki products. We're not talking about niche devices here. This vulnerability impacts a significant portion of their widely deployed line, including models like the MX64, MX65, MX67, MX68, MX75, MX84, MX95, MX100, MX105, goes on, MX250, MX400, MX450, MX600, VMX, Z3, Z3C, Z4, and Z4C. It's important for organizations to know, though, that only devices with Cisco AnyConnect VPN enabled are vulnerable. So if you're using client VPN, which typically relies on L2 TPI-PSEC, you're unaffected by this specific flaw. However, the sheer ubiquity of AnyConnect makes this a significant concern for countless businesses globally.
But here's where it truly gets interesting, and frankly, a bit concerning for long-term planning. Models like the MX400 and MX600, which are older but still, perfectly functional workhorses in many networks, they only support older firmware versions, specifically 16.2 and earlier, due to their end-of-life process. This means they will not receive a fix for this vulnerability. None. This raises a truly fundamental, challenging question about managing hardware life cycles in cybersecurity, doesn't it? What do you do when your perfectly functional but older hardware can no longer be secured against newly discovered threats? Do you rip and replace expensive infrastructure that still technically works, or do you live with a known, unpatchable vulnerability? It's a strategic dilemma with real financial and security implications.
Exactly. If we connect this to the broader picture of enterprise security, it profoundly underscores a critical principle. The life cycle of a vulnerability doesn't necessarily end with a patch's release. If that patch isn't applied, either due to operational complexities, a lack of awareness, or, like here, hardware limitations, well, the vulnerability essentially becomes a ticking time bomb, permanently embedded in your infrastructure. This raises an important question about the responsibility organizations bear to continually manage their digital estate, including factoring in hardware refresh cycles, decommissioning plans, and the overall total cost of ownership, which, let's be honest, often get overlooked in favor of immediate capital expenditure savings. It's a stark reminder that a well-maintained inventory and a lifecycle management strategy are just as vital as the latest firewall.
Yeah, absolutely. Cisco's advice for this Meraki flaw is straightforward. Software updates are the only solution, no workarounds. And thankfully, this vulnerability was found during Cisco's internal security testing, meaning it was discovered proactively by the vendor itself. At the time the advisory was published, there were no known public announcements or malicious exploitation, which is good news. It gave organizations a critical window of opportunity to patch before widespread attacks leveraging this flaw could begin. It's a testament, really, to the importance of continuous internal security auditing. But the Cisco story doesn't end there. They also rolled out fixes for two separate significant vulnerabilities in their ClamAV antivirus solution. This feels a bit like antivirus under siege, doesn't it? The very software meant to protect you has itself become a potential weak point.
It's an absolutely significant concern because an antivirus solution is supposed to be a frontline defense, the guardian at the gate. If it can be compromised or knocked offline, then the entire defense posture of the system it's protecting is critically undermined. It's like having a security guard who can be easily incapacitated, leaving the vault wide open.
The first of these is CVE 2025-2128. It's a heap-based buffer overflow in ClamAV's Object Linking and Embedding 2, or OLE2, decryption process. This is another denial of service vulnerability, but with an even more dangerous twist than the Meraki VPN issue. A heap-based buffer overflow essentially means that the program, when trying to process data, attempts to write more information into a designated memory area, the buffer, than it was designed to hold. It's like trying to pour a gallon of water into a pint glass, the excess spills over. And in software, that spill can overwrite adjacent memory, leading to crashes, or sometimes allowing an attacker to inject and execute their own malicious code. In this specific case, it allows a remote, unauthenticated threat actor to crash ClamAV. They just need to submit a specially crafted file for scanning. Imagine that, you send a file, and suddenly the antivirus software protecting the system just stops working entirely.
And the dangerous aftermath here is profound and immediate. Once ClamAV crashes due to this overflow, the antivirus solution is no longer running on that host. It's just gone. This leaves the system completely vulnerable to subsequent attacks. Think about the common attack chain. An initial exploit might be used to disable security controls, then malware or ransomware is deployed. If the antivirus is down, these follow-up threats would then go completely undetected, allowing attackers to establish a persistent foothold, encrypt critical files, or exfiltrate sensitive data without any immediate resistance or alert. It's basically a free pass for malicious actors.
And as if one critical denial of service bug wasn't enough, there's CVE 2025-2234. This is an additional DOS flaw found in ClamAV's Universal Disk Format, or UDF processing. UDF is essentially a file system for optical media like DVDs, and the vulnerability again arises from how ClamAV handles these files. Similar to the 082 flaw, this is also exploitable by submitting specially crafted files. So it's not just one avenue for attack, but multiple independent pathways for an attacker to render your antivirus useless. While Cisco stated that no active exploitation was known for CVE 2025-2128 at the time of the advisory, there's proof of concept, POC exploit code already out there in the wild. That almost always means future exploitation is highly likely, if not inevitable, as attackers now have a blueprint to craft their own attack.
Indeed. If we connect this to the broader pattern of cybersecurity threats, it profoundly underscores a critical principle. The life cycle of a vulnerability doesn't end with a patch's release. It reinforces the grim reality that Cisco products, given their widespread adoption across enterprise and government sectors, are persistently popular targets for threat actors. We've seen this before. And it bears repeating because it's a fundamental lesson often ignored. Remember the December 2024 warning? Attackers were actively exploiting a Cisco ASA vulnerability that was patched a decade ago, back in 2014. That powerfully illustrates that old, unpatched flaws remain very active and very dangerous threats. Organizations cannot afford to be complacent, thinking that if a patch came out years ago, the threat is somehow fighting into obsolescence. It hasn't. Not if those patches aren't applied and if legacy systems remain unaddressed. This highlights the ongoing technical debt many organizations carry.
That's a truly sobering thought. A digital sword of Damocles hanging over countless networks. Now let's pivot our deep dive to Atlassian. They're another major software company whose products like Jira, Confluence, and Bitbucket are foundational for millions of development teams globally. They have a very comprehensive and proactive approach to vulnerability management, and we've seen their recent patching efforts come to light as well. It offers a bit of a contrast to some of the issues we just discussed.
Atlassian's philosophy on vulnerability management is quite upfront and realistic, which is, I think, a good starting point. They openly acknowledge that security vulnerabilities are an inherent, unavoidable part of software development. It's almost impossible to write perfectly secure code from scratch, especially given the complexity of modern applications. However, they emphasize their constant striving to reduce both the severity and the frequency of these vulnerabilities through a multifaceted approach. This isn't just about finding bugs, it's about a continuous improvement loop that combines both automated and human-driven processes, which is a key takeaway for any organization handling software security at scale. It's about building security in, not bolting it on later.
That multifaceted approach sounds absolutely crucial for a company of Atlassian's size and reach. How do they go about continuously identifying and resolving these issues across their vast product portfolio?
Well, they employ a robust array of tools and strategies, truly a defense-in-depth approach. For automated detection, they use best-of-breed vulnerability detection tools that are run regularly across all their products and infrastructure. This includes host-based scans, using industry-leading tools like CrowdStrike and Tenable.io. These conduct continuous security scans of their external perimeter, and for internal and external environments, they diligently identify open ports, running services, vulnerable applications, and misconfigurations on network hosts. It's like having constant digital watchdogs sniffing out weaknesses.
And what about container image scans? Docker containers are incredibly prevalent for deployment these days. How do they integrate security into that dynamic environment?
That's a vital layer of their automated security. They've integrated the security scanning for Docker container images, specifically using SNCC. This is initiated when these images are deployed to production or pre-production environments. This is critical because while containers offer immense deployment benefits providing a self-contained, isolated environment for applications, they can inadvertently introduce vulnerabilities if the underlying images contain out-of-date or insecure components. Atlassian addresses this by integrating an event-driven container security scanning process that deeply inspects images at various stages. Even better, developers can integrate this scanning directly into their CI/CD continuous integration continuous delivery pipelines for development environments, meaning they can catch issues even earlier before the code even leaves a developer's workstation. That's often referred to as shifting left in security.
And open source dependencies, that's a huge area of risk for practically every modern software company. How do they tackle that challenge? Because it feels like a hydra-headed beast sometimes.
It is indeed a massive area of risk, foundational to modern software development, as almost all applications rely on open source libraries. Atlassian actively manages this by also using SNCC to identify vulnerabilities that may exist in these open source or third-party code dependencies. SNCC helps them identify every single dependency in their software builds and compares them against a vast database of known vulnerabilities. Any identified vulnerabilities automatically trigger a formal Jira ticket, which is, fittingly, an Atlassian product assigned to the relevant product team for immediate resolution. This systematic, automated approach is vital for staying ahead of vulnerabilities in code they didn't even write themselves, but are critical to their product's function. They also continually monitor their AWS configurations against established security baselines, ensuring their cloud environment itself isn't introducing new risks.
So that covers a lot of the automated side, leveraging powerful tools. But humans are still a crucial part of this equation, right? What human-driven avenues do they use to spot vulnerabilities? Those subtle, complex flaws that automated tools might miss.
Absolutely. Their bug bounty program is a prime example of leveraging human ingenuity at scale. They partner with BugCrowd, a platform that gives them access to tens of thousands of independent cybersecurity researchers from around the world. These researchers are constantly testing their products and reporting vulnerabilities. This program was even recognized as best in the industry in 2018 and 2019, which speaks volumes about its effectiveness. It's a way to harness collective intelligence and diverse perspectives, often uncovering issues internal teams might miss.
Beyond external researchers, they also rely heavily on their own internal teams and even their users, don't they? It's a very broad net they cast.
Correct. Customer and user reports are another crucial avenue. Users can report bugs directly through Atlassian support, and internal staff can also raise issues directly with the security team. Then there's their dedicated internal security testing team, which performs risk-based white box assessments, meaning they have full knowledge of the system's internals, unlike a black box test where you don't. They target various areas of the business, including cloud environments, new products, and internal systems. They also strategically partner with specialist security consulting firms for external penetration tests, bringing in fresh eyes and specialized expertise.
And the product security team sounds like they're heavily involved with developers themselves, almost embedding security expertise directly into the development DNA.
Yes, precisely. The product security team conducts targeted code reviews, both manual and tool-assisted, and collaborates incredibly closely with product development teams. Their core goal is to enhance the developer's ability to self-detect and resolve vulnerabilities before the code even reaches a later stage in the development lifecycle. This is a critical shift-left strategy, making security a continuous part of the development process rather than a final audit. And a particularly interesting and highly effective human-driven approach is their internal red team.
The red team, those are the folks who try to act like malicious adversaries, right? They literally simulate what an attacker would do.
Precisely. Their internal red team simulates real-world adversaries attempting to identify and exploit vulnerabilities that exist within Atlassian systems, processes, and environments. This proactive simulation allows them to identify and address weaknesses as promptly as possible before real attackers can find them. It's about testing your defenses under realistic pressure, exposing blind spots, and improving incident response capabilities by experiencing a simulated attack firsthand.
It's an incredibly valuable high-fidelity test of an organization's overall security posture.
With all these different detention methods, automated tools, bug bounties, internal testing, red teaming, how do they keep track of everything and ensure fixes are actually applied and not just lost in a sea of tickets? That feels like a monumental coordination challenge.
It is, and they have a very methodical tracking and resolution process for this. An internal ticketing and escalation system tracks every single discovered vulnerability, no matter the source. Each vulnerability gets a dedicated ticket assigned to the relevant product team, and its remediation is tracked against strict service-level objectives, or SLOs. Their centralized security team oversees this entire process, working closely with product and infrastructure teams to ensure accuracy and help with remediation questions. It's a highly disciplined workflow that ensures accountability.
And once a fix is developed, how does it get rolled out to customers, especially for their cloud products?
It's thoroughly tested, first and foremost. For their cloud products, the fix is incorporated directly into their CI/CD pipeline for automated and rapid deployment, often multiple times a day. This ensures that cloud customers receive fixes almost as soon as they're ready. For data center products, which are typically self-hosted by customers, fixes are rolled into a new release and deployed regularly. Vulnerability tickets from automated scans are closed when rescans no longer find the vulnerability, while manual findings from bug bounties or internal tests are closed by team members once the fix is available to customers. It's a very disciplined and transparent workflow, aiming for speed and thoroughness.
Beyond just reacting to vulnerabilities as they're discovered, Atlassian also puts a significant amount of effort into preventing them from arising in the first place, which is incredibly important for long-term security. You mentioned container image scans earlier, but how does that specifically prevent vulnerabilities during the development process, rather than just detecting them post-build?
It's about shifting left, as we discussed embedding security earlier in the lifecycle. Docker containers offer massive deployment benefits by providing a self-contained, consistent environment, decoupling software code from underlying infrastructure. But, as we discussed, if these images contain out-of-date or insecure components, they become a source of vulnerabilities that could be shipped directly into production. By integrating event-driven container security scanning, Atlassian ensures that as containers are built and prepared for deployment to production or pre-production, they are automatically inspected by tools like the SNCC container engine. This deep inspection identifies vulnerable components. Crucially, developers can also integrate this directly into their CI/CD pipeline for development environments, catching problems before they even leave a developer's workstation. This drastically reduces the cost and complexity of remediation, because fixing an issue in development is far, far cheaper than fixing it in production.
That makes a lot of sense. And what about open source dependencies, which are effectively third-party libraries developers pull in? They are everywhere in modern software, foundational to almost everything built today.
They are indeed foundational, but they bring their own set of risks, as developers are essentially importing code they didn't write. Atlassian actively manages this by using SNCC to identify all open-source dependencies within their software builds. SNCC compares these libraries against a continuously updated database of known security vulnerabilities. If a vulnerability is found in a third-party component, it automatically raises a formal Jira ticket with the relevant product team detailing the vulnerability and its impact. This proactive approach ensures they're aware of and can address vulnerabilities in code they didn't even write themselves, but which is critical to their product's function. It's a constant battle to track and update these external components.
It sounds like they have a lot of strategic initiatives in place beyond just the day-to-day patching and detection. Tell us more about their product security engineers and their use of security scorecards. They sound like integral parts of their long-term security strategy.
Their product security engineers play a vital, dual role. They're involved in both reactive bug fixing and proactive security design. They perform initial triage on newly reported vulnerabilities, assessing their severity and potential impact. Then, they collaborate directly with product engineering teams to identify the best, most robust fixes. These engineers are deep application security subject matter experts, and they are strategically globally distributed to effectively collaborate with development teams across different time zones. Their responsibilities are extensive. They review threat models for new features to identify potential risks before coding even begins, analyze the security of new features as they're developed, perform manual code reviews, conduct penetration testing, and even write new automation to improve security processes. They are essentially embedding security expertise directly into the development DNA, rather than treating security as an afterthought or a separate audit step that happens at the very end.
So they're not just finding bugs, they're helping build better, more secure software from the ground up, infusing security thinking into every stage of development. And the security scorecards, how do those work to improve overall security?
The security scorecards are a fantastic initiative for continuous, data-driven improvement. By collecting and aggregating data from all the various systems we've discussed, automated scanning tools, bug bounty programs, internal testing, red team engagements, but Atlassian can effectively benchmark teams and products against each other and against defined security metrics. Think of it like a fitness tracker for their security posture across the entire organization. This allows them to proactively identify areas for improvement, pinpointing where certain teams might be lagging or where a particular product line consistently generates more vulnerabilities. It effectively creates a transparent feedback loop that drives ongoing security enhancements across the entire organization, fostering a culture of continuous improvement and healthy competition in security.
This all sounds incredibly thorough and sophisticated. Let's bring it to the present with some of Atlassian's most recent security bulletins, showing this philosophy in action. Their June 2025 bulletin, for instance, just came out and detailed a significant number of fixes.
Yes, the bulletin released on June 17, 2025, detailed fixes for 13 high-severity vulnerabilities. This isn't just a random number. It demonstrates the sheer volume of complex issues that even leading companies are continually finding. These vulnerabilities were discovered through a combination of their bug bounty programs, internal penetration testing, and significantly, third-party library scans. This highlights just how effective their multi-layered proactive and reactive approach is in uncovering these critical flaws.
And what types of vulnerabilities were we looking at in this latest batch? Can you give us a sense of the range and what their potential impact could have been?
They fixed a range of critical issues, illustrating the diverse attack surfaces. For example, there was an improper authorization vulnerability, specifically CVE 2025-22228, found in the Spring Framework. Improper authorization means a system might grant access to a user or process that shouldn't have it, potentially leading to data exposure or unauthorized actions. There were also multiple denial-of-service vulnerabilities, which, as we discussed, can crash services and make them unavailable. These included CVE 2025-24970 in Netty, which is a popular framework for building high-performance network applications, CVE 2024-57699 in Netplex JSON Smart, a library for processing JSON data, and CVE 2025-31650 in Apache Tomcat, a widely used web server. A path traversal vulnerability, CVE 2024-3881 seeds, was also addressed. Path traversal allows an attacker to access files and directories outside of the intended web root directory, potentially leading to sensitive data exposure or even remote code execution. These vulnerabilities affected a broad spectrum of Atlassian products: Bamboo, Bitbucket, Confluence, Crowd, Jira, and Jira Service Management, across both their data center and server versions. The recommendation, as always, is to patch to the latest or specific fixed versions immediately to mitigate these risks.
And they had an earlier bulletin in January 2025 too, didn't they, showing this continuous stream of discoveries?
They did. The January 22, 2025 bulletin disclosed 5 additional high-severity vulnerabilities across many of the same products. The potential impacts from this batch were quite severe, including remote code execution, or RCE, denial of service, and unauthorized access. For instance, there was an RCE vulnerability in Apache Avro CVE 2024-47561. Remote code execution is the holy grail for attackers. It means they can run their own malicious code on your system from a remote location, effectively taking full control. There was also a server-side request forgery, or SSRF, vulnerability in the Axios NPM package CVE 2024-39338, which had a CVSS score of 8.6, illustrating the very serious nature of these flaws. SSRF allows an attacker to force the server to make requests to an arbitrary domain, potentially revealing internal network information or allowing access to internal services. These examples underscore the constant high-stakes battle to find and fix vulnerabilities before they could be exploited.
So we've looked at the nitty-gritty of some specific vulnerabilities and explored how major companies like Cisco and Atlassian manage them, with their detailed processes and philosophical approaches. But let's zoom out now to the pervasive, overarching challenge that unpatched vulnerabilities represent for all organizations, and how this ties into the ever-growing risks within incredibly complex digital supply chains. This is where the individual technical details connect to the broader strategic landscape of cybersecurity.
This transition is absolutely crucial because while understanding individual vulnerabilities is important, grasping the systemic pervasive risks they pose, especially when unaddressed, provides the necessary context for why constant vigilance isn't just good practice. It's non-negotiable for survival in the digital economy. We're moving from the microscopic to the macroscopic view of digital risk, if you will.
Absolutely. When we talk about unpatched vulnerabilities, we're referring to security flaws in software, hardware, or systems that have been identified and publicly disclosed, but haven't yet been fixed with an available update or patch from the vendor. The critical point here is that threat actors are actively scanning for and exploiting these known weaknesses. They're not always looking for obscure, never-before-seen 0 days. Often, the easiest path of least resistance is simply exploiting what we already know about. It's a fundamental breakdown in basic cyber hygiene.
And the statistics are quite startling and truly drive this point home, revealing a persistent gap between knowledge and action. A 2019 survey from the Ponemon Institute found that a staggering 60% of breach victims attributed their compromise directly to known vulnerabilities that were not patched. This wasn't about sophisticated, never-before-seen attacks by nation-states. It was about organizations failing to apply fixes that were readily available, sometimes for months. That's a fundamentally preventable problem, yet it remains a leading cause of breaches.
60%. That's a massive number of preventable breaches. And it's not just about recent vulnerabilities either. This is where it gets really unnerving. A 2021 industry report identified unpatched security vulnerabilities as a primary ransomware attack vector. And get this, 56% of older vulnerabilities were still actively exploited by threat actors. This powerfully highlights that the age of a vulnerability doesn't diminish its risk if it's ignored. It essentially becomes a lingering, wide-open door for attackers, a perpetual target for anyone with basic scanning tools. This means an attacker might still be using attack methods from 2015 to compromise systems in 2025 simply because the targets haven't updated. It's wild.
The diverse business risks stemming from unpatched vulnerabilities are profound and far-reaching, impacting every facet of an organization. The most direct and visible consequence is often data breaches, leading to the exposure of sensitive company or customer data, from financial records to personal identifying information. Beyond that, outdated software and systems are simply more prone to performance issues, unexpected crashes, and general instabilities, which can result in costly business interruptions and extensive system downtime. Imagine an e-commerce platform crashing during a holiday sale because an unpatched flaw caused a critical server to fail. Ouch.
And ransomware attacks, which have unfortunately become a nightmare scenario for so many organizations, often rely on these unpatched flaws as their initial entry point. Once inside, ransomware groups encrypt critical files and demand payment, causing massive disruption, potential data loss, and significant financial burdens. We've seen hospitals, schools, and even entire municipal governments brought to their knees by these attacks, all too often traced back to an unpatched vulnerability.
Furthermore, for organizations in highly regulated industries, such as healthcare or finance, failing to patch can directly lead to non-compliance with stringent data protection and cybersecurity regulations. This results in hefty fines, penalties, and severe reputational damage. Exploited vulnerabilities also serve as conduits for various types of malware, including spyware, trojans, and botnets, further compromising systems and network integrity, turning your network into a launching pad for further attacks. And as you noted, beyond the direct financial losses from a breach, successful cyber attacks due to unpatched vulnerabilities severely erode customer trust and can incur significant legal liabilities. The ripple effect across a business can be truly devastating and long-lasting.
You know, we often think about the software we're actively using every day, but there's an often overlooked and insidious threat: idle and legacy software. Even software that's sitting unused on a server, or older systems that are still technically online but no longer actively managed, they can pose significant security risks if it contains unpatched vulnerabilities. This is particularly true for older legacy systems that no longer receive updates or support from their original vendors. They become persistent attack vectors, just waiting for an opportunistic attacker to discover them. And sometimes they're connected to more critical systems, providing an unexpected bridge for attackers.
It's a critical point because organizations often rationalize keeping legacy systems due to perceived integration complexities, or they mistakenly believe the risk is low if they're not actively used by employees. But if these systems are connected to the network in any way, even for seemingly innocuous purposes, they can become a backdoor, an easy entry point that bypasses all the stronger, modern defenses put in place around the actively used systems. Attackers are incredibly adept at finding these forgotten corners of a network.
And we've seen some high-profile, real-world repercussions of these past failures that are still ringing today, serving as stark painful warnings. The Equifax data breach in 2017 is probably one of the most infamous and widely cited examples. The personal information of approximately 148 million people, including social security numbers, dates of birth, addresses, compromised. The key takeaway there, and the reason it's so relevant to our discussion, was that attackers exploited a vulnerability in the Apache Struts web application framework, for which a fix had been released months earlier. Equifax, despite being a major credit reporting agency, simply failed to patch its systems in time. It was a failure of basic cyber hygiene with monumental consequences.
Monumental failure patch management, yeah. It demonstrated that even sophisticated, resource-rich organizations can fall victim to entirely preventable breaches if the fundamental discipline of patching is neglected. It wasn't a zero-day vulnerability. It was a known, solvable problem for which a patch was readily available. The delay in applying it led to one of the largest and most damaging data breaches in history, serving as a stark reminder that cyber resilience is built on the rigorous execution of fundamental security practices, not just on cutting-edge technology.
Then there are the Microsoft Exchange Server vulnerabilities: proxy logon, proxy shell, proxy not shell. These are a collective set of flaws that have seen consistent and widespread exploitation over years, not just months. Cybercriminals continuously exploit these vulnerabilities to access email accounts, steal confidential data, and achieve remote code execution on compromised servers. And here's the truly shocking part. In the first quarter of 2023, more than 60,000 Microsoft Exchange servers remained unpatched against these known vulnerabilities. That's not a historical problem that's faded away. It's an ongoing active threat from flaws that have been known for years, highlighting the persistent challenge of patch management at scale.
This truly highlights the immense scale of the challenge organizations face in maintaining their digital estate, particularly for critical infrastructure like email servers. It's not just about obtaining the patch. It's about the entire life cycle of identifying vulnerable systems, testing the patch rigorously, and then deploying it across potentially thousands of systems, often with minimal downtime. The persistence of these unpatched systems is a testament not only to the logistical complexities involved, but also to the dire consequences of failure, as these servers often serve as gateways to an organization's most sensitive information.
And for anyone clinging to old software, perhaps out of inertia or simply because it still works, the Internet Explorer saga serves as a powerful illustration of the danger. Despite Microsoft formally discontinuing support for Internet Explorer, some organizations still use it or have legacy applications tied to it. A 2021 security vulnerability, for example, allowed attackers to execute arbitrary code and steal data simply by tricking users into opening a specially crafted file. What's more, and this is a critical point, this vulnerability even affected Microsoft's newer Edge browser because it relied on some of the same underlying components. This demonstrates how foundational vulnerabilities can persist across different versions or iterations of software, lingering like a ghost in the machine, making the problem of legacy systems even more complex.
This exemplifies the hidden risks associated with technical debt and organizational inertia. What might seem like a cost-saving measure by delaying upgrades or clinging to legacy software often accrues far greater security costs down the line, both financially and reputationally. It's a classic example of pay now or pay much, much more later. The allure of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, becomes a dangerous delusion in the constantly evolving threat landscape of cybersecurity.
Now let's talk about something that has become increasingly complex and central to modern digital risk: the amplified risks of cloud and third-party dependencies, what we often call the supply chain threat. Financial institutions, for example, have rapidly embraced cloud computing for its undeniable benefits like scalability, flexibility, and cost efficiency. However, this transformative shift has simultaneously introduced new, incredibly complex security challenges. Due to their reliance on a vast and interconnected ecosystem of third-party cloud service providers or CSPs and other vendors.
This reliance on external entities creates incredibly intricate dependencies. Organizations effectively extend their security perimeter to include their vendors' perimeters, dramatically increasing their overall attack surface in ways they might not fully perceive. It's no longer just about securing your own house, it's about securing every house connected to yours and ensuring those connections are themselves secure. If one link in this chain is weak, the entire chain can break, regardless of how strong your own internal defenses are.
So when we talk about this vast and expanding ecosystem of third-party dependencies, what are the common types we're dealing with? It sounds like it's more than just a single cloud provider.
You're absolutely right. It's a multi-layered landscape. You're typically looking at four main categories of external dependencies. First, we have infrastructure as a service, IaaS providers, like Amazon Web Services, AWS, or Microsoft Azure.
These offer fundamental computing resources, virtual servers, storage, networking. Financial institutions depend on them for their core cloud infrastructure, the very foundation upon which their digital operations are built. Second, there are platform as a service, PaaS providers, which give you a ready-to-use platform for developing, running, and managing applications without the complexity of managing the underlying infrastructure.
And then, of course, the applications themselves, often consumed as a service.
Precisely. Third, we have software as a service, SaaS providers, which deliver complete applications over the internet for various business functions. Everything from customer relationship management, CRM systems like Salesforce, to human resources platforms or email services. And finally, there are cloud security vendors, which supply specialized tools and services like intrusion detection systems, identity and access management solutions, or data encryption services. Each of these layers, while offering immense benefits, introduces its own unique set of security considerations and risks that must be meticulously managed.
Each of these layers introduces its own specific security risks, doesn't it? For a financial institution holding sensitive customer data, the stakes are incredibly high.
Absolutely. The risks for financial institutions are multifold and interconnected. Data breaches are a direct and severe threat. If a third-party provider is compromised, sensitive financial data, customer personal information, or proprietary business data can be directly exposed. This isn't just theoretical risk, it's a recurring nightmare. Service disruptions are also a major concern. If a critical third-party service experiences an outage, whether due to a cyber attack or simply a technical failure, it can directly impact the financial institution's operations, its ability to process transactions, or even its public-facing services like online banking. Then there are compliance violations. Non-adherence to stringent financial regulations like GDPR, CCPA, or industry-specific standards by a third party can ripple back and result in the financial institution itself being non-compliant, leading to hefty fines, legal repercussions, and severe reputational damage.
And a significant challenge that constantly comes up is often the sheer lack of visibility and control over these external entities, even though you're entrusting them with critical functions.
Precisely. Financial institutions often have limited insight into the granular security practices, internal controls, and incident response capabilities of their external providers, which creates a major blind spot in their overall risk posture. But perhaps the most insidious and growing risk is supply chain attacks. This is where attackers strategically target a less secure third-party vendor, often a smaller, less resilient company with fewer security resources, to gain indirect, backdoor access to the financial institution's own systems and data. It's a way to bypass direct, stronger defenses by finding the weakest link in the extended digital chain. The SolarWinds incident is a powerful example of this, where a compromise in a software update mechanism led to widespread breaches.
Given these amplified risks inherent in such a complex web of dependencies, what mitigation strategies can organizations, particularly financial institutions with their high-value targets, employ to protect themselves and ensure the security of their data and operations?
There are several crucial and comprehensive steps that organizations must implement. First, establishing robust vendor risk management programs is absolutely essential. This means comprehensively assessing and managing security risks throughout the entire vendor lifecycle, from initial selection to ongoing monitoring and eventual offboarding. Second, conducting thorough due diligence before engaging any cloud service provider or third-party vendor is non-negotiable. This involves in-depth assessments of their security certifications, their compliance status with relevant regulations, and their documented incident response capabilities. You need to know their security posture inside and out before you trust them with your data.
So really digging into their security posture before you even sign a contract. And speaking of contracts, I imagine those become incredibly important beyond just commercial terms.
Absolutely. Strong contractual agreements are vital. These contracts must clearly outline specific security requirements, detailed data protection obligations, and mandatory incident reporting procedures, including timelines and communication protocols. Beyond legal frameworks, regular security assessments and audits of third-party providers are necessary to continuously verify that they meet your security standards and adhere to the agreed-upon terms. This isn't a one-and-done check, it's an ongoing process of verification and validation.
What about technical controls? What can organizations implement on their end to further protect against third-party risks, regardless of the vendor's own security?
Implementing robust technical controls is key on the institution side. This includes strong data encryption, both in transit, as data moves across networks, and at rest when data is stored, to protect sensitive data even if a third-party provider's storage is compromised. Strict access controls, diligently following the principle of least privilege, are paramount. Limit third-party access to only the absolute necessary resources and data for them to perform their function, and no more. And comprehensive monitoring and logging mechanisms are crucial to track third-party activity within your systems and detect any suspicious behavior immediately. Finally, developing a comprehensive incident response plan specifically addressing potential security incidents involving third-party providers is absolutely essential. This plan should clearly define roles, responsibilities, communication channels, and recovery procedures for every conceivable scenario involving a vendor breach.
So what does this all mean for the financial institution that's embracing the cloud and relying on this vast ecosystem of providers? It means even as we outsource infrastructure and services, the ultimate responsibility for security doesn't disappear. It evolves into a dynamic, shared model demanding clear communication and active collaboration.
This shared responsibility model is indeed a cornerstone concept in cloud security, and it's critical to understand. To be crystal clear, cloud providers are responsible for the security of the cloud. That's the underlying infrastructure, the physical facilities, the network, the virtualization layer. But the user, in this case, the financial institution, is responsible for security in the cloud. That's their data, their applications, their configurations, their identity and access management, and their compliance. This clear distinction necessitates continuous communication, active collaboration, and a deep mutual understanding between the institution and its cloud providers. Understanding precisely where each party's responsibility begins and ends is paramount for effective security and for preventing misconfigurations that can lead to catastrophic breaches. It's not just a technical agreement, it's a shared commitment.
That's a really important distinction, and it highlights that simply moving to the cloud doesn't absolve you of security duties, it just changes them, making them arguably more complex due to the distributed nature of the infrastructure. Now, let's get into the practical realities and often frustrating challenges of enterprise-scale patching. We've talked extensively about the critical importance of timely patching, but in the real world of large organizations, it's often far more complicated than simply clicking update.
Indeed. The Cisco Meraki firmware update scenario we mentioned earlier provides an excellent real-world example of this all-or-nothing reality that network administrators frequently face. It profoundly illuminates the practical, logistical hurdles that often lead to delayed patches, even when the risk is well understood. It's a common dilemma that pits security needs against operational stability.
There is a discussion on Reddit among network administrators who live this reality every day that perfectly captured this dilemma. It highlighted the sheer inability to upgrade firmware on just a single Cisco Meraki switch within a network. This is because Meraki's design fundamentally requires all devices of the same type within a given network to run the same firmware version. The updates are applied to the entire network, not to individual devices. This isn't just a minor inconvenience, it's a significant architectural constraint.
This creates a significant challenge for granular control and risk management. While staged upgrade groups do exist, allowing organizations to update devices in batches rather than all at once. The critical detail confirmed by Meraki support is that all groups, including the default group containing remaining devices, must eventually be included in the upgrade sequence. This means practically, as one frustrated user aptly put it, you have to schedule everything or nothing. You can't just pick one device, upgrade it, test it, and then roll it out gradually. This fundamentally limits an organization's ability to thoroughly test new firmware in a controlled, isolated environment before pushing it across their entire network.
That's huge for IT teams, especially in critical environments. Without the ability to isolate and test a single device or a small subset of devices, organizations face an incredibly difficult and high-stakes choice. Either roll out updates to a very large segment of their network with less individual testing than they might prefer, accepting the inherent risk of unforeseen compatibility issues or outages, or they delay applying critical security patches, leaving known vulnerabilities unaddressed. This directly impacts their ability to perform robust pre-deployment testing and manage risk granularly, which is what good IT practice usually dictates and what compliance frameworks often demand. It's a catch-22.
This raises an important question that echoes through boardrooms and server rooms alike. How does an organization effectively balance the immediate, pressing need for security updates with the operational risk of wide-scale deployment without granular testing? It highlights a fundamental tension between maintaining a strong security posture and ensuring continuous operational stability that many large enterprises grapple with daily. It's a complex risk calculation that has to be made every single time a patch is released, particularly for critical network infrastructure, where downtime simply isn't an option without severe business repercussions.
It sounds like a constant tightrope walk, and sometimes it feels like there are no truly good options, just varying degrees of risk. And there's a highly limited workaround, isn't there? Almost a last resort. Meraki support can sometimes pin a device to a specific firmware version for troubleshooting purposes.
It's truly a last resort, meant for specific short-term troubleshooting, not for general operational practice. This pinning effectively removes the device from the standard update management process, which means it will not automatically receive future patches. While it might resolve an immediate compatibility conflict, it often creates its own set of technical debt that will need to be addressed later. As that device becomes an isolated, potentially vulnerable outlier in the network, it's akin to taking one specific guard off duty indefinitely because he conflicts with the new security system, leaving that gate unattended.
So this Meraki example truly illustrates that patching is far more than just a technical task. It's a broader organizational imperative that touches on budgeting, risk appetite, operational continuity, and even corporate culture.
Absolutely. It demands significant resource allocation, not just money for new hardware, but skilled personnel time for planning, testing, and deployment. It requires meticulous planning, often involving scheduled downtime that directly impacts business operations. It's not just about pushing a button, it's about coordinating across multiple departments, IT, security, business units, assessing potential disruptions, communicating widely, and managing expectations across the entire organization. This constant balancing act underscores why comprehensive testing in a non-production environment and a robust rollback plan are absolutely essential. You need to know that if a patch breaks something critical, you have a rapid and reliable way to revert to a stable state, minimizing business impact. In a rapidly changing threat landscape, vulnerability management and patching cannot be a one-time event or merely a reactive measure. As Atlassian's multifaceted, evolving approach demonstrates, it requires continuous review, adaptation, and the integration of new tools and methods to ensure ongoing effectiveness, becoming an ingrained part of an organization's operational DNA.
We've truly unpacked some critical territory today. From the specific digital chinks in the armor found in widely used software like Cisco Meraki and ClamAV, to the overarching comprehensive strategies major companies like Atlassian employ using everything from automated scans and external bug bounty programs to internal human red teams. And finally, the very practical, often difficult challenges they face to keep our digital world secure. It's clear that the landscape of vulnerabilities is dynamic, relentless, and always evolving. But so too are the efforts and sophisticated strategies to secure it. It's a perpetual high-stakes arms race.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's abundantly clear that in our increasingly interconnected world, understanding these vulnerabilities and the complex systems designed to manage them isn't just for IT professionals or security experts. It's becoming fundamental knowledge for anyone interacting with technology, especially given the shared responsibility model in cloud environments. Every organization, every user, plays a critical, active role in this ongoing battle for digital resilience. Complacency is truly the greatest vulnerability of all.
That's a powerful point, and it leaves us with a truly provocative thought to consider as you go about your digital day. Given the relentless discovery of new vulnerabilities, the persistent exploitation of old ones, and the logistical complexities of patching across vast enterprise networks, how much of our digital security truly depends on the diligence and foresight of our software vendors, and how much falls squarely on our own shoulders as organizations and as individual users? To monitor, update, and demand the most secure practices from every part of our increasingly interconnected digital ecosystem, it's a question of shared burden and ultimate accountability, isn't it? As we wrap up this deep dive, remember that preventing data loss and ensuring business continuity in the face of these ever-present threats is paramount. That's where Stonefly comes in, offering robust enterprise storage, backup and disaster recovery, AI storage, and cloud solutions. Their air-gapped and immutable storage provides that crucial ransomware-proof layer of security, offering peace of mind and resilience in a volatile digital world where attackers are constantly probing for weaknesses. To learn more about protecting your valuable data and fortifying your digital defenses, contact sales at stonefly.com and schedule your demo. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay secure, and we'll see you on the next one.